Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Ice Sheet Survival series. It has been a while since the last episode. In that one we completed a lucrative caravan expedition, and not only that, the colony also gained a pet Thrumbo. Now everyone is back in the base and I want to start things off by showing you the current skills of our two colonists. This was asked in the comments of the last episode, so feel free to pause here if you want to have a closer look. And especially with Cambiar here, we can see some very good skill developments. First and foremost, of course, we have to mention his level 17 intellectual skill. Now, onto the business at hand. We start things off in the middle of autumn in today's episode, which means another ice-cold winter is around the corner. Much more importantly at the moment though, the colony currently has a bit of a food problem. Yes, right now we have just enough food to keep everyone alive, but especially our Thrumbo Gabriel is going to cause problems if we don't produce more. And that is why we can now see Cobra at the butcher's table while Cambiar focuses on some repair work. Also in the last episode, this section of conduit here caused a shortage and a fire, so we are now going to fireproof the area. For some reason, and this was also pointed out in the comments of the last episode, steel walls are actually a problem in that regard, because contrary to stone walls, they do in fact burn. So we now have Cambiar remove that last bit of steel wall here. He can then repair all of the conduits that were damaged, and last but not least we're going to replace the entire section with fireproof sandstone walls. Right, with all of that taken care of and some animal corpses butchered, we can now see Cobra train our huskies. Remember, now in Beta 19 they occasionally need some retraining, while our colony founder Cambiar is making his way over to the edge of the ice sheet, where a crashed survivor from the last episode is now no longer in the business of surviving and can therefore be hauled back to our small mountain base. And in that mountain base we now have to make a tough decision. Between episodes I had a closer look at Gabriel the Thrumbo, and looking at the stats here there is a lot of good that catches the eye. We can see for example fast movement speed, good temperature resistances, high hit points and a lot of carrying capacity, but all of that also comes at the cost of an insane hunger rate on a strictly vegetarian diet, a very low willingness to be trained, and unfortunately also with the inability to use Thrumbos as pack animals for caravans. And all in all this sadly reduces the usability quite a bit. Especially since it takes so long to train a Thrumbo, it will take significant time until Gabriel here actually becomes useful to us. During that time, however, Gabriel will definitely not stop consuming food, and over time probably become more of a burden than a benefit. And at this point you have probably already guessed what's going to happen next. Yes, Gabriel provided quite the challenge in the last episode, but today it's sadly time to go. And yes, this also marks the death of the first Patreon-named character in the series. I have a feeling, however, that it's not going to be the last. With Cobra in bed, Cambiar also makes it back to the base shortly after, and while he's busy doing some cleanup we have the first event of the episode, and it comes in the form of an orbital trader, a combat supplier to be precise. And we do have at least a few things we can sell here. All of them are weapons that are either in poor quality or simply redundant. We are not purchasing anything though, even though the helmets at the bottom here would barely be affordable, but that would cripple our finances and you never know when a more attractive deal comes along. So we will be content with making a small profit here. We get rid of a few useless items and receive some silver in exchange. Now with the trade completed and the silver safely stored away, it is now time for some cleanup. Our animals left a bit of a mess in the last episode, and of course no one was home to clean things up, so that duty now falls to Cambiar. In the meantime, Cobra is also back up on his feet, and the food shortage is not over yet, so his first order of business will be to harvest some rice. After all, the butchering produced quite a bit of meat, and we want to continue making fine meals for the colonists, so rice and other vegetables are desperately needed. In the early morning hours then, the plantation is harvested and resowed, and at this point we might as well also allow our huskies to re-enter the area. That way they can at least help with the hauling and they probably won't eat our rice anyway. Now the day continues with cleaning and cooking for Cambiar and Cobra respectively, but at least Cambiar's task is soon dealt with, and so shortly after we can actually see him at the research bench. We already have an active project going on with the ship cryptosleep caskets, and with Cambiar's research skill a few more days should be enough to complete that. In the afternoon then, Cambiar makes his way over to the tailoring bench, because we need a few new clothing items for our colonists, most importantly warm pants and a warm button-down shirt. And to make those as warm as possible, we're going to make them out of camel hair. Of course, also very important, I did not overlook it, our colony just received some offspring, as Ruby once again becomes a proud husky mother, giving birth to 2 husky puppies. And with Gabriel the Thrumbo gone, I didn't want to kill these 2 immediately as well, and especially looking at our corpse storage room, we have quite a bit of meat at the moment, and so I decided that at least for the moment we are going to keep them both. For the names, I once again went to the Patreon naming rights tier, and just like with Gabriel, I picked 2 names at random. The first puppy here is female, and the name I picked was Gork after Colonel Gork. It might not be the most fitting one, but at least it's distinct. Now for the second one, the name Madeline was chosen, but please excuse me if the pronunciation is off. As far as I know, there are several ways to pronounce that name, and if this particular one is pronounced differently, then of course I apologize. And here we are now, 2 new huskies joined the colony, and we'll set both of them to be trained in obedience right away, as that is the only thing we can train at the moment, and of course we also need it if we want them to haul later on. We will also make a change to the huskies' food supply, as for the moment they can feed exclusively on human corpses. We have more than enough of those at the moment, I'd say, and butchering them will always give Cobra a bit of a mood penalty, so I think this is a good way to not let them go to waste. At the same time, of course, it also preserves some of the animal meat and allows us to focus our cooking efforts exclusively on fine meals. Now back to the pants that Cambiar was making. I just realized I made a small mistake here. I accidentally had human leather still checked as a material, and that is now unfortunately what they're made of. Human leather, however, is not the warmest material, so I have queued up another pair of pants, this time making sure it's made from camel hair. And it doesn't take long until both the button-down shirt and the pants are finished. Our huskies are already hauling them to the storage room, and Cambiar has returned to the research bench. And we have another trader to deal with, and once again it is a combat supplier. We are not making any trades at the moment though. We simply don't have much that we can sell right now, and the trader here also does not offer anything spectacular. Instead, we will now continue by shutting off the research bench and then by stripping some of our corpses. Since the huskies will start to use them as food now, it might be a good idea to save the equipment beforehand. I don't think we're going to find anything incredibly valuable, but again, I don't want to let anything go to waste. It is now late evening and Cobra is up again, and he was also the one we made the new clothing for. As you can see here, he's currently only wearing a poor quality pair of pants and a poor quality button-down shirt, and he's now making the switch over to something better. We can also see this slightly increases his temperature resistance from -49 to -50 degrees. Afterwards, he can then also make a few more meals and do some hauling. For a while now, we have a dead lancer lying in our defenses, simply because I forgot to assign a room to mechanoid corpses. Therefore, the dead lancer will now join the dead animals, while Cobra continues hauling equipment. Things continue that way throughout the night and in the early morning hours. Occasionally, Cobra spends some time training the huskies, and Cambiar also joins soon, and with combined efforts, they slowly fill the storage room with dead men's apparel. Around noon then, we can see one of the wind turbines is broken down, and honestly, I wouldn't even have noticed that had Cambiar not walked over there automatically, so of course it's good to know that he'll probably do so in the future as well, but receiving a notification would have been nice. I don't know if it's a bug or by design or if I simply overlooked something, so if any of you had similar experiences, then please let me know. Now Cobra has already made his way off to bed, but for Cambiar the day continues with tailoring. The main reason for that is this notification on the right here, which tells us that neither one of our colonists are properly equipped for the coldest temperatures out here on the ice sheet. And I think Beta 19 switched something up with the temperatures, because we did survive quite a few winters already with more or less the same outfits, but just to make sure we have something warm handily available, Cambiar is now going to make 2 Megasloth wool tuques. As long as temperatures don't demand it, we're not going to wear those. The helmets we currently have equipped are much more useful, I think. But should temperatures actually drop significantly below what is comfortable for our two colonists, then we now at least have something available. With the tailoring job completed, it is now time for more research. I would say we're making good progress, but once again that is quickly interrupted, as for the third straight time this episode, another combat supplier passes by. Now we are going to sell two things here we gathered from the corpses. As far as I know, both the smoke pop and the shield belt here would be considered tattered apparel, and at the moment our defenses allow our colonists to stay out of the firefights for the most part anyway, so we do not desperately need those. That, however, is all we sell, so we can soon see Cambiar return to the research bench, and not long after, Cobra is also active again, producing additional meat by butchering a few more animals. Afterwards, with Cambiar already in bed, it is now time to continue something that we started way back before the two colonists went on their caravan in the last episode, because Cobra still has an unfinished sculpture to work on. The sculpture will be made from granite, so it will not be as beautiful as a marble one. Still, it will be a nice beauty upgrade in whichever room we decide to put it. And so the night passes, with Cobra sculpting away. We can see the final product in the early morning, with Cobra also awake and researching again. And we can see the sculpture is of normal quality with a beauty rating of 50. Now, to make use of that beauty rating, we of course need to install the sculpture first. And just to get us started here, we're going to do that in the room that is currently used very frequently, right next to an already existing sculpture. We might switch places again later on, but for now the sculpture improves the room a bit, making it pretty and somewhat impressive. And in fact, it didn't take me long to change my mind. Just a few hours after installing it, we're going to uninstall the sculpture again, because I honestly think it's better suited in Cambiar's bedroom, which is currently quite mediocre and would profit a bit more from this addition. And here we can see it, what was previously a mediocre neutral bedroom has now been improved to a decent pretty one. Our common and research room meanwhile remains at least slightly impressive, which is still a level above Cambiar's bedroom. And so we continue to make our way through the day, with Cambiar mostly focused on research, and we check back in the evening where another rice harvest is waiting to be hauled in. And that, of course, is a job for Cobra and the huskies, who are unfortunately only a minor help, because just like Cambiar, they prefer to spend their night sleeping and not hauling. Still, Cobra manages to harvest, resow and haul everything himself, and so around 7 in the morning we can catch a glimpse of some freshly planted rice, as well as of a husky looking to diversify its diet. In the kitchen, meanwhile, the rice is immediately cooked into fine meals, and then Cobra also uses some of it on the huskies to keep them well trained. Shortly after, some good news, as Cobra has now finished the research of vacuum cryptosleep caskets. This now completes the second of 5 projects we need to build our spaceship, but believe me, we are still pretty far away from the point where we can actually leave the planet. With the research project taken care of, we will now focus on some base defense. The episode has been awfully quiet so far, but of course that's not going to last forever, and so we should always be prepared. And our base currently has one glaring weakness, and that is this only 1 tile thin wall that led to the ancient danger. This would in theory allow enemies to dig into our base without much resistance, entirely bypassing all of our defenses. Now, of course, we cannot stop them from attacking this point, but we can make it significantly harder. At the same time, though, we can also use this passage as a bit of a shortcut in and out of the base, so we are going to leave a few doors here, but we'll make sure to always keep them closed. And just as Cobra is about to finish building that final door, we have another event pop up, and fortunately it's not a trader this time, instead a small group of Arctic wolves. There are only 5 of them, however, and contrary to our colonists, they don't have long-range weaponry, which is why we now send Cobra and Cambiar on a small hunting trip. I don't think the wolves pose too much of a threat to us at the moment, and especially their small numbers should make them easy to hunt. And here we are, Cobra arrives first on the scene and immediately starts shooting, while Cambiar follows a few moments later and also soon takes aim. In an attempt to flee, the wolves scatter, but more are coming, so we can pick our targets, and so it doesn't take long until the first one goes down. Another volley then triggers an Arctic wolf revenge, turning all of the animals hostile, but honestly this might actually be pretty convenient, because otherwise some of the wolves might have escaped. This way though, they actually run straight into the line of fire, making Cambiar's and Cobra's job a lot easier. The final result then, 4 dead wolves, but number 5 unfortunately got away. The wolves will now be hauled back to the base through our new backdoor entrance. Cambiar, however, goes to sleep after the first trip, and so the remaining 2 fall to Cobra. In between hauling jobs, Cobra also switches over to that new Mega Sloth wool tuque, because winter is getting closer and closer, temperatures are dropping, and we don't need him to suffer unnecessary mood penalties. With a cold resistance of minus 67 degrees, he should now be fine. At least in the few winters we survived already, temperatures did not significantly drop below that. It is now early afternoon and Cambiar is awake again, and we continue things in the already somewhat familiar way with another trade ship. I honestly don't know what's going on this episode, but at least this time it's not another combat supplier. And that means we can now also finally make a few more purchases, starting with 2 advanced components. These are very important and I'll show you why in a moment, but they are also pretty expensive, which is why we will sell the Psychic Sooth Pulsar that we grabbed from the Ancient Danger. In all of the hours playing this game I never found much use for this item, but it has a good market value and helps out financing the components. Now we'll talk a bit more about the components in a moment. For now we will disassemble 3 of the 4 Cryptosleep caskets in the Ancient Danger area, which will yield quite a bit of steel and also some uranium. Now I think it's safe to say that uranium is the rarest material in the game. It will be needed though to construct some of the more advanced technologies, and that ultimately also includes our spaceship. So Cambiar and the Huskies will now carry everything back to the base, where we can also see Cobra, who has already begun extending our working area. He doesn't do that for long though, because another harvest needs to be brought in, but shortly after we can see Cambiar continue where Cobra left off. We will of course smooth the floor as well to keep everything nice and pretty, and then we can talk about those advanced components. Up until now we only had to deal with regular components, which were enough for pretty much every electrical device we have built so far. As we climb up the tech tree however, that is going to change, and more things will require advanced components to be constructed. Now luckily you can craft those yourself from regular components steel, plasteel and gold, however you need to have a new workbench, the fabrication bench, in order to be able to do that. And somewhat ironically, that fabrication bench itself requires 2 advanced components to be built in the first place. And that fabrication bench is now exactly what we're building in our workshop area. Next to the advanced components, it will also allow us to craft some pretty powerful weapons and armor. As you can see, we also add a second tool cabinet in the area, simply because we have the space and every workbench can profit from up to 2 cabinets at the same time. Crafting things at the fabrication bench is normally a bit of a lengthy process, and for that reason we go with another comfortable blue fur armchair. And here we are, the fabrication bench is constructed and we can see we are now able to craft advanced components ourselves. The rest of the setup is also quickly built, a few conduits hook the fabrication bench up to power, and with that our workshop has expanded. For Cambiar, it is now time to head off to bed while Cobra does some cleaning work at night, but that work is also soon interrupted as we have chunks of spacecraft fall from the sky. And at this point I have to say I'm thankful for every event that's not a trader, and considering the fact that we just spent 400 steel and 12 components in our workshop expansion, I think the ship chunks here couldn't have better timing, as we can definitely use the resources we get from deconstructing them. Having a set of 3 ship parts makes it even more convenient, and we even have another singular one close by, which we will of course also deconstruct while we're here. And so Cobra, Cambiar and the Huskies can now haul 120 units of steel and 33 components back to the base. After the first few hauling trips, Cobra then heads off to bed, and Cambiar also leaves the rest for the Huskies, because he now returns to the research bench, where we are now getting started on the 3rd of 5 Starship projects, the Starship Reactor. That one introduces a very interesting mechanic to the game, as we will be frequently raided after we have built one, so sooner or later things out here on the ice sheet are definitely going to get bloody again. For today, we cap off a fairly uneventful episode at this point. Yes, we made some solid progress, the base is functioning smoothly, but all in all, things have been fairly quiet. Now we'll see if that streak continues in the next episode, but for today we will make the cut here. Before we leave the ice sheet though, I want to say thank you, because just a few days ago the channel surpassed 30,000 subscribers, and that is a huge number that I honestly never expected to reach when I started this series, but without question this series played a huge role in the growth of this channel, and so I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who subscribed. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, then please feel free to leave a thumbs up. And if you want to support the channel further, then you can either subscribe and join the crowd of 30,000, that is if you haven't done so already, or you could also check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.